Hello, I am back again with another one of these list thingies. Last time I did my favorite performances by an actress. This week I'm going to do my favorite performances by an actor. This list was a little harder to do, and I'll tell you why. It's kind of Hollywood's fault. There are a lot, and I mean a lot, of well-written, well-performed performances or characters on screen that are female, but there are more to choose from in the category of men. Don't think that's me being sexist when I say that. What that is Hollywood has just given us more of the male performances than they have the female. They haven't given us enough strong, powerful female performances. There are the ones that are out there are great. There need to be more. So I noticed that when I was coming up with this list, like, there really needs to be a lot more. And not that there aren't a lot. There are quite a few stellar female in film roles that I didn't go over last week because they weren't in my favorites. But there should have been more to pick from. Sorry, I hope it'll call me a snowflake or anything for thinking that. I just think that they could do more to be a little bit more inclusive. So this is a list of, once again I have paper because I have one brain cell left and it goes tss, 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 tss. So this is a little bit of a longer list, but I won't go into every single one as much as I did before. The last one kind of ran on a little bit long. So these are my favorite performances by a male in cinema. This is not in any order, once again, except for my number one. My number one might surprise some of you, but it's my favorite performance ever captured on film by a dude. So here we go. You like my Teen Titans Go! Fuck you if you don't like Teen Titans Go. I don't give a shit. I love it. Alright. My first one is going to come from the Pirates of the Caribbean series, but it's not Johnny Depp. Captain Jack Sparrow is a wonderfully played character, wonderfully written character, tailor-made for somebody like Johnny Depp, and I thoroughly love. I like all five of the Pirates films. I do. But my favorite performance out of all of them is Geoffrey Rush as Barbossa. Geoffrey Rush as Barbossa, in my opinion, is a much more deep performance. It has more range to it than Jack Sparrow. And that's nothing against Jack Sparrow, it's just the way it was written. But we see him go through a gigantic arc over the course of the five films. Where it ends, I won't say, because the last one, I know a surprising number of people who want to see the fifth Pirates film and haven't seen it yet, so I won't spoil you on what happens with Captain Barbossa. I'll just say his storyline comes to a close in this one, maybe. He's been killed before. Oh, I just gave it away, sorry. He's been killed before and brought back, so who's to say it can't happen again? Unfortunately, Barbossa dies. Barbossa's my favorite. Gene Wilder as Willy Wonka in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Said last week how much I hated the new, well, it's not new anymore, the remake of the Chocolate Factory. The original is one of my favorite films ever made, and watching Gene Wilder in that movie is just magical. Just, we are the music makers, and we are the dreamers of dreams. Those lines that he delivers just so perfectly. As a kid, it captivated me, and as I got older, it captivated me. And I don't cry a lot when celebrities die. I got a little teary-eyed when I read that Gene Wilder passed away. And I saw an interview with him once, where he said, even to this date, and this interview was only done like 15 years ago, he's like, to this date, he's like, parents will come up to me with their children and say, hey, my kid thinks you're Willy Wonka. Can you say hi to him? And he would immediately go into character and start talking to the kids as if he were Willy Wonka. That's cool. Alright. I decided to put Samuel L. Jackson on this list, and that was a tough one. Which performance of his do I choose? Because I really like The Hateful Eight, and he's the best part of that entire movie, but I had to go with the tried and true one. Samuel L. Jackson's Julius in Pulp Fiction. One of my favorite performances on film. Never has the word motherfucker been used so eloquently and just so flawlessly as it was in that film. Samuel L. Jackson's, and I won't bother you with the story, but go read why he says motherfucker so much. He has a speech impediment that saying motherfucker over and over again gets him ready to do his performances. That's a true story. He's a motherfucker, and he does have a slight speech impediment, and it helps him prepare for roles. True story. Kiefer Sutherland. Now, my favorite Kiefer Sutherland performance ever was not in cinema. I I know the show 24 kind of took a nosedive towards the end and it had some goofy seasons, but seasons 1 and 2, especially 2 of 24, probably one of my favorite television performances of all time. But I couldn't pick that because it ain't a movie. I'm going with movies only, or else I'd have to do 45,000 of these lists, which eventually I might. I don't know. World might end soon. But I picked Kiefer Sutherland as Doc in Young Guns 2. Now, he was great in Young Guns 1. Loved him. But in 2, there was just something more to that character. He seemed to be having more fun with it. Like in the first one, he was great. I mean, first Young Guns movies, God, that's one of those movies. It's on that list of movies I could watch every single day and never get sick of it. I love the first Young Guns, but in Young Guns 2, his performance is it's awesome. And there's no other way to put it. He's just awesome in that movie. His last little rapport with Billy, when after he's been shot and he's like, "Let's finish the game," and the blood is dripping from his mouth. Fantastic. I love Kiefer Sutherland's one of those guys that even in movies that suck ass, he's still fantastic in them. So I don't know. I really dig Kiefer Sutherland. I won't even go into this because there's no reason to. Michael J. Fox is Marty McFly in any of the Back to the Future films. Who's going to argue with that? It's Marty McFly. It's one of the greatest film characters of all time. Love Michael J. Fox in general, but Back to the Future is where he shined for me, especially in the first, but I actually really like the third one. When I was younger, I liked Back to the Future 2 better. Now that I'm older, rewatch them now, I think Back to the Future 3 was a little bit better of a film, but that's just my opinion. What else have we got here? Ben Affleck. And this one might surprise you, people who don't know me as well, but it's as his performance in Dogma as Bartleby. And people may ask me why. One of my favorite scenes in any film ever made is in the movie Dogma. And it's right after Loki and Bartleby are thrown off the train. And they're in what looks like a parking garage or something, and they have an argument. And Ben Affleck's performance, fucking furnace, Ben Affleck's performance in that scene, he's just so intense. And say what you want to about Kevin Smith's films. I like most of his movies. I understand why people don't. To each their own. I like Kevin Smith. I even like Tusk. Tusk will be getting a full review on here one day because I will defend that fucking movie. I won't defend Yoga Hosers. That was pretty bad. And I'm not really a fan of Jersey Girl either. But all his other stuff I kind of like. But that part when Matt Damon looks at me like, "You're not talking about going home. You're talking about fucking war on God." And just a look on Ben Affleck's face like, yes. It's like, ugh. So, Ben Affleck is Bartleby in Dogma. Sean Connery. I wanted to put a James Bond performance on here because I'm actually a huge fan of the James Bond franchise. I don't think there's been a bad Bond. I know there's ones that people like more than others. My least favorite is Roger Moore. But I still really like those movies. But my favorite James Bond movie is not most people's favorite James Bond movie, but there's a reason. But his performance in Thunderball. Thunderball is my favorite James Bond movie, because in my opinion, that's when James Bond really became the myth of James Bond. That's where they went fucking over the top. The movie starts off, and he's got a jetpack that literally, it doesn't just look shitty, it literally looks like they put it together directly before filming with aluminum foil. And he sells that shit. He knows what he's doing is fucking ridiculous. And he's just still, I'm Sean Connery, I'm doing this shit. And he takes off in that jetpack, straight-faced. And knowing him, that probably only took one take, because he was known for one takes. Like, he was really good at it. But I guarantee you, when the take was over, he laughed his ass off like, what the fuck is this thing? It's fucking aluminum foil. Alright. Next performance comes from the Horrible Bosses films, especially Horrible Bosses 2. Now, I'm not typically a line-o-rama, goofy comedy kind of a guy. The older I get, the less I like those movies. Like, I don't like the Hangover movies at all. And I know a lot of people do. That's just not my kind. The older I get, the less I like the American Pie films. Now that I'm older, I really don't care for the first two at all. American Wedding, I think, still is an okay movie. It has a charm to it. But I like Horrible Bosses. But Jamie Foxx is Motherfucker Jones. And that's not just me looking for another chance to say motherfucker, like I need one. His name, if you haven't seen the movies, is Motherfucker Jones. And just I won't give it away in case you haven't seen it yet, because those movies did okay at the box office, but they weren't runaway hits. I advise you watch the first one just so you can watch the second one, and Motherfucker Jones does something at the end of the movie that's just hilarious. But Jamie Foxx is a very talented actor. I've loved him in Baby Driver. I loved him in a lot of things. And that movie, I can't remember the name of it, where he played the homeless cellist. I think that's what he played, a cello. I can't remember the name of that movie that he did with Robert Downey Jr., but that was an amazing movie. But his performance as Motherfucker Jones and just everything I want in a comedy, over-the-top performance, that's it. And he just deadpan the whole time. Yeah. And then they say anything, like, call him out for being wrong, and he'll just be like, yeah, right, all right. And what? All right, Motherfucker Jones. Here's a no-brainer. Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger. I love Kane Hodder as Jason, but he didn't play him in all the films. And let's face it, as good as Kane Hodder was, they could have found somebody to give a similar performance. Not quite as similar, because Kane Hodder was great, but it's not on my top list. But Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger, not one, even the worst of the Freddy films, which most people consider 2 and 5 to be the worst, which I agree. I think 2 and 5 are the worst of the initial 8 films, including Freddy vs. Jason. But yeah, Freddy's Revenge and Dream Child are not fantastic, but they're still watchable movies. But he is still just amazing, especially in Nightmare 3, where he really becomes the smart-ass one-liner, "Welcome to prime time, bitch!" Freddy Krueger. Love that shit. Gotta put a Denzel performance on here. And like I said, you've seen all my reviews, Roman J. Israel Esquire went on my worst films of the year list, but his performance was stunning. Denzel does not know how to give a bad performance, ever. I challenge you, find me a role. Even Book of Eli. I don't like Book of Eli. He's awesome in that movie. It had nothing to do with him or any of the other actors in that movie. They were all good. My camera just flashed at me. My camera flashed me. Ooh. So, Denzel as Coach Boone in Remember the Titans. Remember the Titans is a little cheesy of a movie, but it's the kind of cheesy that I like. It's a very satisfying movie. It really is. I mean, it has a solid beginning, middle, end. And there's not a useless character in the film. Everybody in that movie's good. That movie, you learn something watching Remember the Titans. But my favorite performance of the film is the scene where he takes them running, and it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. And they run, and there they are. They're on Gettysburg Field. And it hits the players then. He describes the whole thing. This is where men came to die so we could have our freedoms. And when he gives that speech at the Gettysburg battlefield, one of the best monologues ever given on film. Denzel, one of the greatest actors who's ever lived, but my favorite performance he ever did was Coach Boone in Remember the Titans. What else do I got on here? Cary Elwes, which I always pronounce his name Cary Elwes. That's how I thought it was pronounced, and I just recently found out, no, it's Elwes. Who knew? Cary Elwes in Princess Bride, as either Wesley or the Dread Pirate Roberts, both one and the same, whatever. Princess Bride is in my top 5 favorite films ever made. I love The Princess Bride. It is one of those movies that just, we could watch 3 times a day and I'd never get sick of it. And everybody's great in that movie. Everybody. Robin Wright, I think that's the first acting, or her first feature film she was ever in. And she was wonderful in that movie. And Mandy Patinkin, he almost made this list too for that performance. Andre the Giant was awesome. Wallace Shawn, who I love anything Wallace Shawn is in. I've actually watched My Dinner with Andre with Wallace Shawn. It's just 2 guys eating, but it's a good movie. But Cary Elwes as Dread Pirate Roberts, his lines are just delivered perfectly. He's amazing. I just saw for the first time the Studio Ghibli film The Cat Returns. And he's the voice of the Baron, like one of the main characters in the film, a cat. And he's, there. He delivers a shockingly stunning performance as a cat. He's Cary Elwes. He's fantastic. All right, let's move along. My favorite movie of all time is Godfather. So Michael Corleone and Godfather. Any of the Godfathers. My favorite is the first one, but I think Michael Corleone is presented the best in the second film. And so he gives the best performance, but overall performances make the first one my favorite. So Al Pacino, given millions of good performances, his best, in my opinion, was Godfather Part 2. This is a Sylvester Stallone performance. Guess which one? It's not Rocky. It's First Blood, the first Rambo movie. He is just terrifying, but charming, and you sympathize with him. I mean, he's done terrible things. He doesn't try to kill anybody. He's just trying to get people to get the fuck away from him. But if you have any kind of a heart, in your body and you watch that end where he's in the office and Colonel Troutman comes up and he just breaks down, and if you can watch that without tearing up, you don't have a fucking soul. When he's like, how am I gonna walk? You don't have any legs. You don't have any legs. And it's just like, oh my God. And that was happening. I mean, I have many relatives and friends and family friends that were in the Vietnam War, and they all came back a little different, changed, and we spit on those people when they come back. You know, I mean, yes, truth be told, politically, I do lean slightly to the left, but that's one thing. You know, you support your troops regardless, and reading how the Vietnam vets were treated by some people when they came home was just disgusting, and calling them baby killers and shit like that. Listen to the song Rooster by Alice in Chains and you'll hear it. But that movie really was like trying to stick up for and speak out for returning Vietnam vets that were not getting the treatment they needed for post-traumatic stress disorder. There are people who actually have credited that film with why Vietnam vets started getting psychological treatment and medical treatment for their post-traumatic stress disorder. So the movie deserves a lot of credit for that. It's a wonderful film. I highly suggest you watch First Blood with Sylvester Stallone's director's commentary. You will learn some things. Highly recommend that. Alright, let's move on. This one is a little bit before I was born. 1931. One of my favorite films of all time. I say that about a lot of movies, but I did a top 20 favorite films of all time, and when I've said that, these films have been on the list. The 1931 Bela Lugosi Dracula is one of the greatest films ever made. In my opinion, it's the best horror film ever made. And while Bela Lugosi is fantastic in that movie, Dwight Frye, the guy who played Renfield, is my favorite part of the movie. He is terrifying. That look he has on his face, and just think, it's 1931. You know, we haven't discovered true horror in cinema yet. We had horror films, but here was a guy being terrifying, and he was fucking terrifying. So Dwight Frye as Renfield, rumors are on set to make people uncomfortable around him, so nobody would be comfortable with him. Like in the movie, you know, he eats bugs and stuff because he's like turning into a vampire, and he's like become Dracula's like lapdog. He actually walked around the set eating bugs and dirt and shit and being creepy, so nobody was comfortable on camera with him. I thought that's method acting right there. That's going the extra mile. I wouldn't do that shit. All right, we're down to the last couple. Let's see. This is a newer one, a movie that got panned by critics. I don't know why. Me and my buddy Matt went and saw it in the theater. We were the only two people in there and had a fucking blast doing a Mystery Science Theater on it. Victor Frankenstein is such an underrated film. I beg of you, if you have not watched Victor Frankenstein, watch it. James McAvoy as Victor Frankenstein gives one of the best performances ever captured by a camera. And Daniel Radcliffe is amazing in that film too. The two of them have such a good chemistry with one another. They play off each other so well. I mean, he's a normal guy, and here's Daniel Radcliffe as Igor, and he's the hunchback, but he's the straight man. James McAvoy is completely insane in this movie, but he's wonderful. I mean, his performance in Split is really goddamn good, and I love the Chronicles of Narnia films, and he's great at as Mr. Thomas. But I'm telling you, James McAvoy as Victor Frankenstein. Yeah. Alright, so we're down to the final three. I know I listed a whole bunch of them, but I wanted to give some movies mentions, you know. Two of them are from the same film franchise, and I had to do it because I couldn't not do it, and then I'll give my number one. Ian McKellen as Gandalf in any of the 6 Lord of the Rings and Hobbit films. Ian McKellen is almost maddeningly good. You almost get angry at how good he is in those fucking movies. So good. Especially in Return of the King. One of my favorite scenes in that movie is where he and Pip, who is actually my favorite character in the film. Pip thinks he's going to die, and Gandalf explains to him what heaven's like, and he's like, well, that doesn't sound so bad. And he's like, no, it does not. And he comforts him in this moment where they think that this impending doom, but then, of course, everything turns out okay. So, Ian McKellen is Gandalf. The other one is a motion capture performance. It's also from Lord of the Rings. Anybody who knows me knows what it's going to be. Andy Serkis is Gollum. I mean, come on. You want to see something funny, and I don't give a shit if you're a Trump supporter or not. Go online and watch Andy Serkis reading Trump tweets in the voice of Gollum from Late Night with Stephen Colbert. One of the funniest things, because he doesn't even, he just jumps up and just jumps right into it. Like, fake news! And just, I can't do I can't do the Gollum impersonation, Smeagol. I don't try to, yes, precious. Yeah, I can't close my throat off like that. Like, I can do Meatball from Aqua Teen Hunger Force, but I can't do Gollum. It's too hard. You know who does a great Gollum? Benedict Cumberbatch. He can sound spot on like him. But anyway, those are that. Before I give my number one, next week's best of is going to be my top 10 best Marvel films ever. That doesn't just include the current Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm including all the other Marvel films that came up before, the old Punishers, the old Spider-Mans. A lot of those won't make the list this time. I'm going every Marvel-related film ever. Blade, all of them. Just not just the current ones. Going all the way back to the 70s. Yeah, even though none of those will make the list, because I don't know if you've seen his original Spider-Man and Captain America, or the original, well, not that any of the Fantastic Four films have been all that great. Except for I do like Rise of the Silver Surfer. It's just bad enough. And I really dig the dude who plays the Silver Surfer. I thought he was really good. I hope they use him again when Silver Surfer shows up in Avengers Infinity War, which I know he will. So that's next week. My favorite... I know somebody will be like, really, dude? You're just saying, no, this is the God's honest truth. Did I just say that? Yes, I did. The honest truth, my favorite performance ever given by a dude on screen is Rick Moranis in Spaceballs. He's perfect. That should be taught in school, the comedic timing in that film. It's perfect. He's perfect in that movie. Just everything he says is just perfect. Keep firing, assholes! Or just when he's like, I always have my coffee before I watch my radar. Everybody knows that. Of course we do, sir. And he just, those looks he gives to the camera, like when he breaks the fourth wall. Or when he seduces the princess, when he gets the princess, and he's like, fooled you! I love that shit so much. And apparently the scene where has the dolls, he improvised most of that. Like, Mel Brooks kind of told him what he wanted to do, but he just started doing that. And they just kept filming. But Rick Moranis was one of those guys that, another one, he just, for unattractive, nerdy guys, he's like our hero, because... fuck is that outside? It sounds like a car wreck outside. Awesome. Maybe I'll have something else to put at the end of this video. Anyway, for short, dorky, unattractive guys who want to do things with their life, there's Rick Moranis to show you, hey, anybody can be a film star if you're talented enough. Because, man, he's just... I like him in Ghostbusters. I actually do like the first Honey, I Shrunk the Kids movie. The rest of them are fucking terrible. And I like Little Shop of Horrors just fine. But... man, Rick Moranis as Dark Helmet in Spaceballs is my absolute favorite performance by a dude. Dude, male, boy, lad, hombre, fuck ever. Alright, so this weekend we'll be back with Black Panther. I cannot fucking wait to see this movie. And I'm going to say something in the review for that movie for the people who don't understand why that film is so important. Yes, Black Panther is a very important film. Very important, and I will discuss why. And it's not just because they put a black guy as the lead, because we've had black superheroes before, but never a superhero where they're a black, African-American, African man, where their ethnicity and their race was the forefront of their character. Kind of like we've had powerful women as superheroes. Scarlet Witch, Scarlett Johansson is the Black Widow, been fine, but Wonder Woman was the first one that her femininity was part of the forefront of her character. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the Black Panther. I want to see it twice just because of all the morons protesting it, but we'll be back with that this weekend. Next week I'll be back with my favorite Marvel films. And the reason I waited till next weekend was just in case this one cracked the list, because it might. But I'll see you then.